Boys practice their swings on the roughest of pastures, dreaming of becoming the next Sammy Sosa or Robinson Cano. After all, this is San Pedro de Macorís, where even the metal sculpture on the roundabout publicizes the city's baseball heritage.
It is indeed my hometown, and it feels great always to come back here.
I'm pretty lucky to have Juan Marquez as a guide here in San Pedro. He's a native. We visit his birthplace at 68 Calle Luis Valera, in the barrio then known as Arena because it was mostly sand and standing water. Marquez eventually became an Episcopal priest and calls his hometown the birthplace of his church here.
We received a good number of migrants from the West Indies. And of course, they brought their culture, they brought their religion and their customs. And that's how really the Anglican Church got into this country.
The growth of the Episcopal Church here is almost counterintuitive. After all, the Episcopal Church is a close relative of the Church of England, and the Dominican Republic is a legacy of Spain. And yet, the Episcopal Church has grown from 23 to 60 congregations in less than 20 years because it recognizes, according to Bishop Julio Holguin, a distinct characteristic of the Dominican people.
Dominicans have solidarity with their fellow men. 50% of Dominicans live in poverty, and 20% live in extreme poverty.
That poverty isn't immediately obvious, especially for travelers coming, as we were, from the more dire surroundings of Haiti. In the Dominican Republic, you'll still find plenty of picture postcard scenes, but get 2 or 3 streets off the main drag, and you'll understand the bishop's comments. In the Andreas barrio of Boca Chica, these quiet streets hide the reality of a neighborhood where people often have electricity and running water for only 4 hours a day. In the countryside, life is tougher. This is Ingenio Angelina, home to about 8,000 people. Juan Marquez showed me around the community where he had served as a young pastor in the 1970s.
It was wonderful to meet some of the people that I worked with in those days.
Ingenio Angelina used to be a sugar refining town. Then the mill closed.
The Episcopal Church in this country has always been committed to serve the poorest of the poorest. So you will find most of our churches and schools located precisely in very poor communities.
Entrenched multi-generational poverty takes its toll in other ways, especially its impact on health. The Episcopal Church has cast its lot with the poor, so this clinic in San Pedro is a logical response to that need.
Child mortality is high. That comes from 5 different things, basically. That's malnutrition, problems with malaria, vaccine-preventable diseases, acute respiratory infections, and diarrheal disease.
Providing medical care to all who need it is a constant struggle. Anita and Michael Dawn are physicians from Ohio who came to San Pedro as missionaries a decade ago.
Medical and health care, it is in fact a way to demonstrate to people that they are made in the image of Christ. It is a way to show God's love in a very tangible and helpful way.
The clinic in San Pedro is a gem in the efforts of the Episcopal Church to improve the health of the Dominican people, but it is an exception to the rule. In most communities, folks depend on periodic assistance, medical teams from the United States coming down for short-term mission trips. La Bahia is not much more than a wide place in the road on the north coast, with some gorgeous vistas and a tiny community in sugarcane country. The afternoon we arrived, more than 40 members of a U.S. medical team were spending the day running a clinic.
Seeing a lot of hypertension, a lot of diabetes, lots of dry eyes from the dirt flying around.
It's important to have associations such as the Diocese of Quincy, to which each year Father Larry and his wife come with many doctors and nurses to provide care to several communities in this municipality of Montellano.
The Reverend Daniel Samuel says La Bahia does not yet have an Episcopal parish, but he considers the community to be part of his congregation in nearby Montellano. We went to Montellano the following day as several hundred men, women, and children gathered outside Niño Jesus School. in hopes of spending a few minutes with the doctors, nurses, or dentists on the multi-state medical mission team, which was organized by a parish in Quincy, Illinois. Dr. Amy Harvey is a Philadelphia physician who is part of a group called the Dominican Dreams Foundation.
You get to use skills that you haven't used since medical school in the United States. So it's great. You really get to talk to people, meet people, you spend the time with the people, and we're trying to find a way to integrate into their society to help them help themselves.
Here, I'm actually the director of the pharmacy. Overall, for our mission trips, I'm also involved early on before we come to the Dominican, actually doing purchasing of the medicines, counting them out. It makes my day job in IT worthwhile. I'm married to a doctor, and I see how much reward she gets from treating her patients back home. This is my way of giving back to the world and getting some reward for my life.
On the Sunday we spent in the Dominican Republic, the Church of San Jose near Boca Chica was almost full, and the pastor, the Reverend Augusto Sandino Sanchez, preached from the Gospel of Matthew about the Sermon on the Mount. San Jose is a warm, friendly congregation with a big Sunday school program for the children, but for me, the most memorable event of the day happened right after worship, across the street at Hogar Obispo Isaac, as congregation members sang songs, served Holy Communion, and just visited with the senior citizens who live there.
Right now we have 13 residents, but there's space for 32, and probably some of the best part of their lives are spent here because they're cared for with such wonderful attention by the employees here.
She's 96 years old.
Karen Carroll, who grew up in New Jersey but spent much of her adult life in Florida, says the Episcopal Church was again fighting tradition when it built this home. Dominican families usually insist on keeping older relatives with them, but some people fall through the cracks.
Many of these residents don't have families here. Some are being supported by their relatives in the United States. The monthly cost to live here is $200 a month. So can you imagine nursing care in the United States for $200 a month? Not possible.
It is precisely another emphasis of the Dominican Episcopal Church because it is a ministry for all families.
The younger generation is clearly a priority for the Episcopal Church here.
In the Dominican Republic, an estimated 250 to 300,000 children each year are without a classroom. There aren't enough classrooms, so the church has taken this as part of its ministry.
The Episcopal Diocese operates 25 schools, and one of those we visited carries great meaning for Juan Marquez. Many years ago, you would have walked in here as a young child?
Many years, I was lining up here, raising the flag right there, right here, back in the 60s. Many memories, of course, going through those 4 years, San Esteban High School. Every time I have the opportunity, I come to town, I visit there.
One weekend afternoon, Juan Marquez took me on a tour of the Zona Colonial in Santo Domingo, where you can feel the historical and cultural influence of Spain, a force the Episcopal Church must carefully navigate. Here, on Christopher Columbus Plaza, is the Cathedral of Santa Maria la Menor, the oldest cathedral in the Americas, which Pope Julius II authorized half a millennium ago. It's the iconic symbol of the power of the Roman Catholic Church with its unmarried male priests. The Episcopal Church does ordain women. The Reverend Ercilio Peralta is an amazing priest, serving a school with 600 students, a parish, and several missions. Like all pioneering women, she's heard the whispered doubts.
Yo pienso que el asunto es cultural.
I think the issue is cultural. And as Latinos, the Catholic formation penetrated strongly in the culture. And the machismo was very strong here.
Another novel idea in this traditionally Roman Catholic country is the priest who is married. Episcopal priest Hipólito Fernández Reina and Lilian Mercedes Perez are husband and wife and partners in ministry in San Francisco de Macorís, third largest city in the nation.
Sometimes there's difficulty. to understand that we are married priests, that a priest can be a faithful husband and minister, and to educate children and to raise a strong family.
Father Hipólito is pastor of the Church of Jesus Nazareno, which also includes a school for 500 students on the relatively prosperous street called Guzman Abreu. In a much tougher neighborhood across town, Lillian leads El Buen Samaritano, a combination shelter and school for children up to 3rd grade. Father Hipólito is not only a married priest, he's the son of a priest. Father Hipólito Fernandez Sr., now in his 80s but still active.
It has been a great honor to be a priest and son of a priest.
The whirlwind of activity of the Episcopal Church here seems to rest on a fundamental philosophy: serve the people and not only spiritual.
Let's take, for example, the dove. The dove needs both its wings to fly. If one wing is not well, it cannot fly. In order for the Church to accomplish its mission, it needs to use both wings, one for the proclamation of the gospel and one to serve the needy.
We covered a lot of territory across the Diocese of the Dominican Republic with Father Juan Marquez as our guide. We crawled through the touristy streets of Boca Chica, where Sunday afternoon means a day at the beach. We sped along the Autopista Duarte, surrounded by distant mountains and nearby rice paddies where the harvest comes only with backbreaking labor. But I wanted to make sure we went back to San Pedro, Juan's hometown, and specifically to San Esteban Church, where his spiritual journey began.
I had no idea what I was getting into at that time, but I said yes, never look back, a wonderful journey. I rejoice in the many blessings and many opportunities that I have received in the Episcopal Church and from our good Lord.